Welcome to the Reforming Men podcast. We have a great episode lined up for you today, but before we jump into it, I want to let you know that we could use your help to keep our project going. Next month, in November of 2025, we're going to be rolling out an opportunity for you to sponsor our work, and we hope you'll join us. If you choose to be a sponsor, you'll get access to bonus content 5 to 6 months in advance of other viewers and listeners, and you'll also get some Reforming Men branded merchandise, which we look forward to sharing with you here in just a couple of weeks. So stay tuned, and let's get after it. Well, we're joined today by teaching elder Brian Cosby. He serves as senior pastor of Wayside Presbyterian Church. It's a PCA church on Signal Mountain in this great state of Tennessee, right here in my very own presbytery. He's an adjunct professor of historical theology at RTS Atlanta and at Ligonier's Reformation Bible College in Sanford, Florida. He holds degrees from Samford University, Beeson Divinity School, and the Australian College of Theology, where he holds a PhD. He's a former chaplain. He was a captain in the United States Air Force Reserves. And Brian now serves on the board of trustees for my alma mater, Covenant Theological Seminary. He is an advisory board member of Beeson Divinity School, his own alma mater there, where he got his MDiv. He's a council member of the Gospel Reformation Network and coach for Briarwood's Lampstand Revitalization Ministry. He is also the author of over a dozen books. Brian enjoys reading, carpentry, hunting, fishing, and making YouTube videos. And he and his wife, Ashley, have 3 children, and they live on a small farm. And Brian is also the author of a 3-part series on the Reforming Men blog entitled Man as Protector. So, Brian, I do want to say one thing. I think that the fact that you enjoy making YouTube videos is somewhat of an understatement, because you have a YouTube channel with 250,000 subscribers. 250,000 people hit the subscribe button on Provide and Protect. That's quite the feat. And so tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel, what kind of content you have. Just give us the whole overview of why Provide and Protect and how you did it.
Yeah, well, appreciate you guys having me on for this fun conversation today. Yeah, so 3 years ago, I started the YouTube channel, and I did it because I've benefited so much from a lot of other people on YouTube. Anytime I don't know how to do something, then I just go watch a YouTube video on it and someone shows me. And so I felt like it might be a way to give back, but also to have a positive influence, especially on men. And that's one of the main reasons I started it. So my boys take part in it with me. They do a lot of the filming. And so I just started filming stuff I usually do every day. And the boys started filming that for me and posting it. And it took about a year to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. And then, a year later, it started really blowing up in a big way. And then we got to 100,000 and then 200,000 subscribers, and now you're approaching 250. So it's it's kind of people ask me, what's your topic? Like, what's the niche of your channel? And, it's called Provide and Protect. So we want to equip and inspire men, especially, to be providers and protectors for themselves and their families and their communities. That's kind of our goal. And so it's really related to everything from homesteading to firearms and knives and biblical application on all those things in life. But again, it's really targeted to men. So that's kind of the overview of it. But it's been a fun journey, and we get probably 6-8 business offers every day. We turn them all down just about, but we're doing this for other reasons. But it's been a pretty wild ride over the last few years.
Yeah, Brian, you mentioned the channel's name, right? Provide and Protect, and you even give some credibility to the fact that those 2 words have a lot of foundational biblical reasons, especially in regards to men, why you chose them. And so can you just root that into the scriptures just for a moment, this idea of providing and protecting for our listeners? That'd be super helpful, I think.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it goes back to Genesis. I mean, that would be the starting point for really both of these. But I mean, the idea of a provider, someone working the land, as it were, in Genesis with Adam. So there's something in the creation mandate there that makes work a good thing. I mean, work became very difficult, obviously, at the fall with thorns and thistles and the sweat of your brow. But work itself is still a good, positive, God, glorifying thing that He's given to us. I mean, it's a way that we can have satisfaction in this life. So the providing piece is one who is really a man that takes responsibility not only to provide for himself, but also for those over whom he's responsible. And in particular, his wife, his children, and to a broader extent, his community. I mean, that gets into that topic of, the moral proximity, and the idea that, we have an obligation, not just generosity, but more of an obligation or responsibility to care for those who are closest to us in time, space, and relationship. And so obviously your own family would be first on that list. It's kind of like the Galatians 6:10. We want to take care of everyone, do good to everyone, but especially those within the household of faith. There's a moral proximity there. So that's the providing piece. You see that all the way through the scriptures, and especially with men and their responsibilities that they take, not just for financial providing, but also providing that spiritual leadership and guidance to the family, to their children, bringing them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, all those things. The protection piece, obviously that would come in after the fall, right? Because there's really not much reason for needing for protection before sin. But certainly all the way through the scriptures, we see examples of this, of needing to protect, whether it's the Old Testament, Kings, or even the law in Deuteronomy, and someone breaks into your house and you kill that person that's breaking into your house to harm you or your family, and they're killed, the blood of guilt is not upon you. So from the Old Testament through the New Testament, and you see the calls to act like men, to be courageous, that Paul would write about. And so I really found on the protection piece, the help from the larger catechism on the Sixth Commandment really helpful. So when you look at, those duties required and the sins forbidden, in the Sixth Commandment in the larger catechism, that, those things are so helpful. And, it goes into great detail about protecting yourself and others, and to the point of lethal protection. It's always in self-defense, right? It's always in
Right.
defending of the innocent. One aspect I want to point out, though, in that is in the sins forbidden portion in the larger catechism, it talks about one of the ways that we can break the sixth commandment is if we see someone in need or needing protection and we have the means to protect them and we fail to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think of like the bully on the playground, and you're watching a bully pummel some innocent kid and you don't do anything about it. You just kind of sit back and watch it all play out. Well, you should step in. In the same way, if you're at the gas station at the mall or something, and someone's there, and someone is causing harm or a threat of harm to you or someone else, then there's a responsibility of stepping in there. So those are some of the general principles.
Yeah.
That pertain to
Yeah.
both those.
Yeah, you touched on an idea. I can't remember what phrase you used. What popped into my mind as soon as you're talking about it is, ironically, what our Roman Catholic vice president referred to earlier this year. The doctrine of the Ordo Amoris. Just the order of loves. It's really a concept that has fallen on hard times as globalism has just become the standard, human mindset, even in the Western world. This idea that we are finite creatures who actually have more of a moral responsibility to the person in the home, across the street, in our church, in our community, than we do someone across the world, is kind of lost on people. They'll take verses like, or the conversation that Jesus has, about the Good Samaritan, the parable, the story, and say, well, like everybody's our neighbor. And so like,
No.
therefore, and it's like, well, yes and no. We don't
Yes and
encounter,
no.
we
Yeah.
don't encounter 8.8 billion people the same way that we encounter every day. And God is not unreasonable. Certainly, he does not think that the Samaritan could have cared for everybody to the way that he cared for the Jewish man that he found half dead in the ditch, right? So elaborate on that a little bit for us about how practically we as men, because what we're trying to do through this podcast is exhort men to masculine Christian piety. And I do think people will disagree with us, I think. But we do believe that piety looks different for men than it does for women and children out in the church, in the home, and in society. So I know I've just opened another can of worms, Brian, but kind of help us think a little bit more clearly about our duty to our neighbor as part of our piety.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned the parable there, right, of the Good Samaritan, and the only reason that makes sense, like that parable makes sense, is because he was close to the wounded, left for dead man in time, space, and relationship. Now, he didn't have the relationship necessarily. I mean, actually, he didn't have much of the relationship, especially as a Samaritan, right? But he was close to him in time and space, and he was there next to him in his moment of need, and so he had more of a responsibility to take care of him than he did from someone like, as you said, someone from across the world. Now, if we gave money to a church that burned down in India, it'd be generous of us, but it would not be it's not obligation, you know.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to put false guilt on anybody
Right.
that, because some church in India burned down. Now, if a church was next door to our church or something, or another fellow sister PCA church nearby or something, well, then, yeah, we would have a greater moral responsibility to that. So,
That's right.
and really, I mean, it's and this is to your point earlier, it really is on men to take that initiative, to step out, to be brave and courageous. I mean, we've kind of lost that today. There's something innate in the male,
Yeah.
so about being courageous and rushing into the fire, into the Twin Towers. There's a little illustration, little video of two brothers, and they're about 10, 11 years old, something like that. They turn onto this really kind of dimly lit, creepy hallway.
Mm.
And there's a doll, like a kind of not Chucky, but kind of a weird doll at the end of the hallway. And immediately one of the brothers just ran. He got out of there. The other brother ran right at the doll and kicked it as if it was like a field goal. So what's the distinction, between why some people in the face of danger, knowing and recognizing danger, will rush in anyway, and take care of it. And I want more men to be in that latter category, where if instead of, someone's getting attacked, instead of everybody taking out their phones and videotaping it, like someone's got to rush in and do something. Or the Ukrainian girl that gets stabbed on the transit, you know, what really just saddened, sickened me is that all these people are around and no one did anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's that kind of thing in our
Yeah.
culture that's just a big problem.
Yeah. And Brian, the more I reflect on Irina Zaruska's death in that moment, because I think eventually somebody got up and went over to her, but it was too late. I think about that situation, and I think we're so intoxicated with our devices and ourselves, and we're so ill-equipped to deal with those situations. I think I kind of wonder if everybody's passivity was not a lack of compassion as much as it was a complete inability to know what to do and how to do it. Just a lack of, and so one of the things I really appreciate about your YouTube channel is you emphasize just the practical practice of manliness, the practice of providing and protecting. Not too long ago, I was with a guy in his home, and he basically has a room the size of my study that is basically like John Wick's loadout room. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's I didn't have to say it to him because I was going to, but he said, I've got to stop investing in guns and start investing in training because I don't have enough training. And
That's
I was
right.
like, yeah, that's correct. So speak to that a little bit. The whether it's because I think a lot of people, being a jiu-jitsu guy, a lot of people that I've talked to have this mentality of, well, when the moment arises, I'll just know what to do. And I just, you don't understand my mentality, bro. I just see red. That's the common kind of Southern good old boy, rise to the occasion myth that they have in their brain. So speak to that a little bit.
Yeah.
You've got military experience. You've got lots of experience. So tell me.
Yeah, the training piece is huge. I know a lot of guys like to go buy nice guns and gear and equipment, but they don't invest in the training. I've done quite a bit of training with Warrior Poet Society and some other groups, and and people say, that's so expensive. Well, it is. Yeah, it is expensive for sure. But the skills and the knowledge that you learn from something like that, it is so worth it. And I've got a friend nearby where I live. He's got his own training course, and it's not just firearms. It's medical, medical treatments, other things too. Even training with things like communications and all those things. There's a lot of young men today that are really interested in knowing how to be a godly man, how to be a responsible man, how to be a provider and protector. And it's like two times more of these young boys, senior boys at University of Michigan study that came out, that there's this, you see the graph, and the boys, senior boys in school, they're trending more conservative while females are trending more liberal.
Yep.
And so a lot of these young men, they're searching internet on I need some help here. And so they're going to people like Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. And of course, none of them are Christians. And there's that issue. But then the best offer we have in the Christian world, maybe Doug Wilson. And then there's issues there. So, what I'm trying to do, honestly, with the channel and with the book is really to promote a biblical vision of masculinity and manhood. Matt, you've just finished a book on this as well, but trying to promote this, especially for a lot of these younger men out there, just physically, being prepared physically, thinking about your own health. One of the research things I did is I looked at 8 different metrics on men today, and it was just abysmal. The mental health piece, legal issues, relational issues, vocational issues, all the way down the line, spiritual issues, addictions. In every metric that you can number, men are just struggling in a big way. And, but I think a lot of guys are like, you know what? I'm tired of being called toxic all the time, and that I'm the problem of society because I'm a male. God made me this way. He's hardwired certain intrinsic traits into me as a male. And I don't want to apologize for that anymore. And so what we want to do is channel those people in the right direction. So they're not just going down and seeing, well, masculinity is Andrew Tate, and therefore I need to go buy flashy cars and get a bunch of loose women around me or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
We need to point them to a better model of masculinity than that.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that we started this podcast and started our blog. Me personally, I can't speak for Matt or for Ben or for Jared or for Josh, or anybody else. But I just personally got so tired of listening to, and this is not father hatred. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I just got really tired of PCA boomers critiquing all the different guys that young men, millennials, and Gen Zers are turning to in the church, the Jocko Willinks and the Jordan Petersons and the Joe Rogans. And it's just okay, well, you're not giving our young men any alternatives. You're basically just giving them another men's pancake breakfast and an opportunity to come sit around and talk about their feelings, but you're not giving them practical instruction on how to, some of these poor guys don't even know how to talk to a girl. You're not giving them any practical instruction, just how to step into manhood, do a job interview, talk to a girl, get married, raise kids. you want to beat them over the head with the Westminster standards, but they don't even know how to just be human, and they're trying to look for mentors. And,
Yeah,
we,
no, I mean,
we,
the relationship piece is huge. I mean, 60% of men under 30 are single today. So it's a major issue for our generation and for future generations if we don't give them something right now. You look at the state of, I mean, 77% of men are either classified as obese or overweight in our country. I mean, on so many areas, it's not even close. Like but again, more guys. I don't. My reason for saying that is not to beat anybody down. It's to
right.
say, like, we've got to make a change here. We
Yeah,
got to
Yeah.
make a change here.
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
And when
Someone
you,
recently said it was an ad, for Men's Health and Fitness, and the person speaking said the average man today has the same testosterone level as his grandfather's mother. And I was just like, man, that is that. I mean, 100 years after that woman lived, like, where have we gotten? Like, in society. And I think there's natural outcomes and natural consequences of that being part of our physical estate, but then there's also the spiritual component of all that as well. And if there was a spiritual metric, that was the equivalent of low T, I mean, I think it would be off the charts right now for how bad it is in America,
Mm-hmm.
not to mention Canada and other parts of the Western world. So
yeah,
thank you for
Brian,
what you're doing.
yeah, Brian, you were talking about some of these statistics, but also talking about the religious curiosity and even the masculine curiosity of these new generations,
Mm-hmm.
particularly Gen Z and
Mm-hmm.
late millennials, and we were seeing those positive trends before the Charlie Kirk assassination,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, I've been looking at this quite often. After that assassination, things just were inflamed and exploded, and you're seeing exponential growth rather than just steady positive growth in these conservative
Mm-hmm.
masculine ideas that young men are having. But also at the same time, we're saying that there is an issue in the church. We were, when we started this podcast, we were saying nobody in the PCA hardly is speaking to just masculinity,
Mm-hmm.
while everybody else seemingly was in the CREC and other platforms. And so, in your mind, Brian, how can, I mean, because we need to take advantage of this, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing some major positive uh, influences amongst younger men,
Mm-hmm.
and so we need to train them. We need to prepare them. It's not enough just to say, go get married, have kids, start a family, work well. How can the church be about the business of discipling young men well, in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a Titus 2 model would be great. I mean, we always think of Titus 2 with women, right? I mean, a lot of times that's the only association. When people talk about Titus 2 ministry, it's like a women's ministry, but really the same kind of thing, a principle applies for men too. And we always say it's a both and model in the church. So it's church and home. It's kind of like what Paul told Timothy. What you've learned, from whom you've learned it, from as a child. Of course, he was taught by his mother and his grandmother, and yet it was Paul who took him under his wing as a spiritual father, as one who was discipling him and training him. And so is both church and home together. Today it's like in the youth ministry and children's ministry world. What we've seen in churches is either one or the other. It's either all church and no family, no home emphasis. Like youth ministry is like, hey, we're going to kick out the parents, not put anything in them. Or there's a smaller section, obviously, movement that has a very negative view of the church. Like the church is infiltrating the family, and it's only the family and no church. Well, the biblical model is actually both together. There's a combination of both together, and so in training these young men, one of my concerns with all of this after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Matt, is the parable of the sower. One of my concerns I'm seeing is there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of this, which is I'm thrilled that the number of Bibles that are being sold are just skyrocketing 43%. Since his assassination, Bible apps, Christian music, all that is exploding for sure. But I'm just hoping that the seed falls upon good soil. It's not falling upon rocky ground or the weeds and going to get choked out after a while. It's kind of like the Billy Graham thing. Was it 92% or something of, a year later they would follow up with all the people that made decisions for Christ, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And, none of them were in, like, 92% were not in any kind of local church
Yeah.
or something. I can't remember
Yeah.
what the top exact number was, but something really, really high like that. So my concern for a lot of these young men is just a lot of hype, but
Yeah.
there's not the discipleship as you're talking about. And that's really going to be on those elders in the church, shepherding well and not just being a board of directors or something. They're actually shepherding the congregation well.
Yeah. And let me ask a follow-up to that because, of course, Titus 2 is promoting intergenerational discipleship, older men training younger men. And I agree with you. That's the answer. We've got to disciple these men well. And for someone in our age bracket, we're looking at guys younger than us and we're going, hoorah, let's do it.
Mhm.
And yet, Nate brought up the boomers, so they're fair game at this point. But you do see some pushback from that generation when it comes to discipling younger men. It's either that they're not aware of the hype, and the religious curiosity. It's that they're ambivalent to it. I was talking to an older gentleman right after the Charlie Kirk assassination, and we were talking about all of my younger men in the church who were texting me, "Have you seen this? What are we going to do?" I mean, they were so fired up, and he said, they just need to be mature about this. I grew up in the '60s and '70s, and political assassinations were just a thing of the day. And I don't think he meant any sort of evil in that comment, but he just wasn't aware of the
Mhm.
impact and the curiosity and the hype that has come with this very politically motivated event. And it's different. I mean, Charlie Kirk was a professing Christian man, and so it has sparked religious curiosity at the same time, not only just masculinity and good politics, common sense politics, but how do we win? How do we convince those guys who are just they've put themselves on the sideline and
Mhm.
going, we need you to step up, and
Mhm.
here's the time. If ever was there a time, it's now.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I think two ways.
yeah,
Two ways. One is, there's a lot of us that we get inspired when we see someone else being courageous and brave and taking that mantle of masculine responsibility. There's something that inspires us when we see it. I think that's why Charlie Kirk inspired so many, was because he was, as it were, going into the lion's den every week and being courageous with his faith and his beliefs. I think a lot of people are like, man, I he's getting shot at and death threats and eventually killed. What does it cost me to live out my faith? Does it cost me anything? So there's that piece. But the other piece is the number of influences, I think, it is now ubiquitous everywhere that someone 100 years ago did not have. It says in what Luke 6:40, where Jesus says a student's not above his teacher, but when he's fully trained, will be like his teacher. And so you have to ask, well, who are the teachers of the young men in our country? And it really comes down to internet, public education, their peers, and entertainment. And so
Man.
obviously the parents are a primary influence, but if they're not being proactive, If dads are not being proactive in discipling their children, if there's no family worship, if there's none of this in the home, there's just the assumption that because they're in proximity to me, that my kids will grow up to be, strong men of God or something. Well, that proximity is not going to necessarily going to do it. There's going to be a proactive element. And so asking the question, well, who are these young men's influencers and teachers? If they're going to be like them one day, well, who are they?
Yeah.
And that's a big deal we've got to tackle for sure.
Man, I love that you mentioned their friends. What you allow in your presence becomes your standard. And I think, I think so many parents, I think, again, I love boomers. I've got two deacons that are boomers. They're wonderful. Got an awesome ruling elder who's a boomer. But I think boomers were completely naive to this principle that's all over the book of Proverbs, which is that your companions shape your character. And I it was it just I think back, I went to a Christian school from fourth grade to high school graduation, and I just think back on the the influences that were in those classrooms, because what Christian schools will often do is they'll often have a policy that you can be a student here as long as only at least one of your parents is a professing believer. Or sometimes they have policies that, hey, you've been kicked out of every public school,
Yeah.
and now you're going to come
Come
here.
to this Christian school.
Come to
Yeah.
this Christian school. And we think, oh, well, we'll help them. No, actually what they do is they become the leaven that leavens the whole lump. And I saw that time and time again in my Christian school growing up. And so then we have these concepts of youth groups, and I'm not saying youth groups are completely unbiblical. I'm just saying that the way they're often run is it's the youth pastor and maybe a couple of assistants, and then just a bunch of kids, many of whom, like in the one I grew up in, weren't even from covenant families from the church. So then you've just got a herd of what I lovingly call a herd of morons, just all together, shaping each other and molding each other. And wow, this is not ideal. And so I think as parents, we have to help our kids choose their friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we've been doing. Our oldest, I had to pull my son aside. He'll be 7 in a couple weeks. I pulled him aside about a year and a half ago. And I said, because his mentality is he sees new people and he goes, oh, friends, anybody, kid, adult, he viewed them as friends. And there was this one kid who's not in our church, not in our community, but he every time we see this kid, he has this habit of basically luring Zeke into trouble and then blaming him for it. And Zeke was just naive to it. And I had to explain it to him. I said, buddy, this is not a friend. You don't play with this kid anymore. He is not a friend. And we're going to have to keep doing that as our boys and our daughter get older, is help them think through how they're being treated by other people, how these other people are living. Because, your friends, your closest peers influence and shape you. If they're in school, they're part of the curriculum. They're the co-curriculum. And so for the 24 men that will hear this, please think about the way that you think about the people that you allow your children to be around, the ball teams they're on, the church you're in, because those people will have, those young people will have a huge impact on their lives. Yeah. And so help yourself, right? Help your kids.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Brian, we've been talking about some themes based off of what you're doing on YouTube with Provide and Protect. But we also mentioned in your introduction that you have written or writing a book on masculinity. Can you tell us a little bit about that project that you're working on?
Yeah, so the book itself is also called Provide and Protect: A Guide for Men in a World of Weakness, Wokeness, and Compromise. And I go through the plight of men today, the war on men today. So I really do a ton of research. So the front of it's just the first part is just really research heavy, examining the war on men, looking at cultural Marxism, looking at feminism, the second wave sexual revolution that we're in, secularization, and show how these are converging into this war on men today. I talk about the issue of time, the issue of discipline, which is a big issue for men, and then what it means to be a provider and a protector. That a provider protector is someone who, again, takes control of his time, is prepared. But ultimately, I mean, the true man, the real man, is Jesus. And you think about Christ as a provider, of course, but also as a protector. I mean, you think about all those examples when he's protecting so many others, the weak, the children, um, but he's like that ideal, he's the ideal man in the sense where on the one hand, he's like the most compassionate, loving, gracious you can imagine. On the other hand, he's turning over tables and making a whip. Like, we read about
Hmm.
a certain side of Jesus in the Gospels, and then we look at Christ in Revelation 19 coming back with a rod of iron.
Yeah.
And so I love John Lovell. He talks about in his book, The Warrior Poet Way. He talks about how to be the most dangerous man in the world in the room, and be a good man, be a good man. But there's times where you have to be dangerous, to be good for others, to be loving, to show love for others. And so the book that I recently finished writing is now with my agent, so we'll see where that goes. Um, but the backdrop of that was what we talked about earlier. So many young men today seeking some kind of guidance and direction, and as much as I might agree with some of the things that like Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson, those people are saying,
Yeah.
um, on the other hand, it stops short. I think they're diagnosing some of the problems correctly, but they're not providing full orbed answers and solutions to those problems.
Right. Yep.
So that's what I was trying to do in the book, but also it's a very practical book. I mean, like for example, the chapter that I have on discipline. What does it take for a man to be disciplined with his time, his work, his physical health, mental health, spiritual health? I think it was M. Scott Peck that said that the will to do anything is desire of sufficient intensity that translates into action. And so we want to
Hmm.
increase that desire, but also add hope to it that change can actually happen. So, your listeners or viewers here, um, to this, that a lot of guys feel stuck. They feel stuck financially. They feel stuck in so many ways. But the thing is, there is change that can happen, and this is the power of God in transforming us by the renewing of our minds. And so we need to be disciplined, and so we talk about what that looks like, very practical ways to be disciplined as a man. So all those reasons kind of were the backdrop to this book. And I've been doing a lot of men's retreats and men's conferences, and so a lot of it kind of came out of my experiences with that, and the questions and answers, the Q&A times with those as well. So that's kind of the backdrop of the book.
Yeah. I think we've talked about our books together,
Hmm.
and your scope kind of widens it out to a lot of cultural issues that we're facing. Mine are
Hmm.
more specific within the church, going to
Hmm.
this kind of extreme, very immature, flamboyant masculinity, or just falling into the paths of feminism and moving us into egalitarianism. But there is a
Hmm.
question, right, that both of our books are trying to address: what is a man to do? And and we're putting forth as the prime example the Lord Jesus Christ. I mean, He is the one that is
Amen.
courageous. He is the one who um, is flipping tables when it's appropriate, like you
Hmm.
said, but also treating the little children like little sheep in a tender shepherd. And so, yes, we're heralding Christ likeness in masculinity,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this, and I just was asked this the other day, and it was a really intriguing question that I've been mulling over. Of course, I wish I would have said all these thoughts that I had after the question was answered,
Yeah.
but that's usually how it works anyway. But
Yeah.
um, why we've given some credibility already to men and women are wired differently. Christian men are called to a different piety than women are. why can't we as a church take the model of women's ministry and just do it with men, if that makes sense? A lot of times we try to establish men's ministries within the local church, and we do exactly the same things the women are doing, just with men in the room. Why does that not work? Why does that not engage our men well? Why do those men's ministries usually fall apart?
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is it lacks that courageous spirit that we long for. So, you look at if you basically just take a women's ministry and it's filled with fellowship times and those kinds of things, which are good and healthy and great, but there's not the action side of it, like doing things. I mean, guys like to do things together, and there's something really healthy about that. I mean, this if you go back to young boys in school today, in public education especially, they're just being told, just be like a girl. Like, I mean, that's essentially the message that they're hearing. Just sit quietly, don't do things, don't work with your hands, like just be more like a girl. And if you don't become like a girl and gentle in every kind of way or something, then we're going to give you some medication to make you like that. And the problem is all those young boys have grown up and now they're in the church. And so when we think about a ministry, well, then what is a gentle, wonderful ministry look like? Well, it's going to be women's ministry.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and do that for men's ministry now. So
Yeah. They grew up having to raise their hand and ask for permission for everything, even to go to the bathroom. And so now then we get them in the church as adults and we're like, wait, where are all the men to take initiative? It's like, well, we just spent 18 plus years beating the initiative out of them.
Yep.
And our
Go ahead, Nate.
mentality is often we look at the kids that don't ask for permission and they land themselves in the principal's office all the time. We look at those guys and we're like, bad eggs. Not really sure they're going to do much in life. And then we look at the kid who never gets a demerit. He just, is constantly cleaning his glasses and reading his Bible. We're like, he's going to make a great pastor one day, and it's like, man, we've completely divorced grace and nature. And we've completely valued the feminine nature over the masculine. And then as Rome is burning, we're like, gosh, we're all the men that could save this place.
Yeah.
Well, you neutered them all. Congratulations.
Yeah. I mean, there's a risk aspect that I think is healthy, like a good thing. And it's not because of the fall, but there's a riskiness that we have a tendency toward, to take risks, to be daring. 90% of occupational fatalities are men. And the reason is they're going into those fields that are more dangerous.
Well, Brian, I was told there was male privilege. So how can it be that 90% of workplace fatalities are men?
Yeah. So,
Nate and I did an episode for our supporters on just this idea of athletics and coaching and sports and the benefits and the concerns with things, in that athletic realm for our young boys that we're raising as sons. But one of the things that we really hit on that I was super appreciative about was that men need responsibility, men need initiative, men often grow through suffering, and so we really need to lean into things like competitiveness. I do not mind my child, my son, being competitive. I want him to have some initiative. I'm looking for ways to give him responsibility. One of the things that I talk about in my book is just some very practical ways that I've promoted responsibility with even my 8-year-old little boy is, if he wants to go ride his bicycle down the road and go visit a buddy, I'm all for that. You go and ride your bicycle by yourself. I'm not going to text that other dad to make sure you got there. You told me you were going there. And if I just happen to ride by and you're not there, there's going to be consequences. And when I send them out, I tell them, you've got to be home by 6 p.m. Now, does my 8-year-old have a smartphone to go check the time? No, but he needs to be responsible enough to ask those parents of the house he's at, what time is it? I'm supposed to be home at 6. Can you remind me when it's 5:55 and I need to ride my bicycle back? And so I'm looking for, even small ways to promote responsibility and discipline. Nate has a herd of boys at his house, so he knows this better than I do. Usually on the weekends, all the boys in our neighborhood are in our backyard and they're wrestling and they're playing tackle football and they're roughhousing, and you see, their competitive edge. You see, them just spearing one another without any pads. And I mean, of course, any mother that sees that is just mortified. They are so concerned about broken bones and hurt feelings, and and yet I'm pushing, for them, not to be foolish, of course, but I'm pushing them to have some camaraderie like that. That's good for our boys. And it's like y'all said, if I raised him with no discipline, no responsibility, not knowing what it's like to be a team, not knowing what it's like to receive instruction. I mean, all these things, it matters for him as he gets older, starts dating, gets married, starts having his own family. And anytime I correct my son, I tell him all the time, Brooks, I'm doing this so that you'll be a more godly man than your father is. And even discipline for him a lot of times looks like wind sprints on, on the street in front of our house. He's going to learn through suffering. Time out.
Well, suffering produces endurance, and
Yep.
endurance, character, and character, hope.
Yep.
So,
There we go. Yeah,
Man, that's so good, Matt. That's something that I'm constantly remembering. Speaking of Jordan Peterson, like we did earlier, is he made the point that he's like, little boys got to play to exhaustion. Like every day they've got to play. They just got to wear themselves out. And most schools, most institutions don't give boys enough opportunities to just run and be nuts and get, to run around and sweat. And so as the weather turns colder and wetter here in East Tennessee, I'm trying to figure out, all right, how do we give them more opportunities to run around and keep playing outside, even though the weather is terrible? Because, man, they just, my 4-year-old, man, when we give him plenty of outlets, he puts his head on that pillow at night and he's gone in 60 seconds, man. He's just out. And so
and that's how we like it.
And that's how we like it. That's right. And so really just I gotta keep helping positively discipline them in exerting themselves, so they can get the most out of their day and then sleep well, as they're meant to as children.
Yep. Well, Brian, I've got one more thing I know we're getting close to an hour mark here, but if you've got the time, I'd love to hear about your thoughts on the man's responsibility to be a cultivator. Not only to, I think it definitely plays a part in this idea of provision. But what's your ideas on, cultivating, a good, stable home, cultivating a holiness within the home, cultivating, church life into your family. I mean, cultivating for your community and society. There's so many, different spheres we could talk about here. But what's, where do we see this idea of cultivation in regards to masculinity coming into play, especially according to the scriptures?
Yeah, I mean, we would be all in agreement that, the more that we can put our family, our wives and our children in the way of holiness before the means of grace in the home, high view of Lord's Day. I mean, the fourth commandment's falling. I was speaking at Midwestern Baptist Seminary not too long ago, and, we were doing a Q&A panel afterward. And one of the things that they were doing at this conference, at this event, is they were giving away tickets to the Kansas City Chiefs game. And it happened to be a game on Monday. And I just made an off comment, not even really thinking about it. I just said, hey, I'm glad that game's on a Monday and not the Lord's Day. And everybody kind of looked at me like,
I was about to say,
what?
You probably got looked at like a wild
you wouldn't
man.
go if it's... Oh my goodness. You thought I just said some heretical, like, denied the Trinity or something. But certainly high view of the Lord's Day, and I used to think of the Lord's Day as like all the things I can't do. Um, so and now I'm like, man, the Lord's given me a whole day to like worship and rest. Like, what a great privilege and gift that is. Like, so cultivating holiness in the home, certainly, family worship, certainly, high view of the Lord's Day, of ordering the week aright, of leading by example, leading from the front, not pushing from behind all the time. So if you're asking them to do something, yes, they need to do it. It's their chores, or, my kids do goats and chickens and everything else around our place. But I be willing to do anything. And this is the part of the role of a man. I'm the one that's laying down my life, if it comes to it, to make sure that they survive, that they live, that they thrive. So cultivating that sense of holiness in them, that they would see me leading from the front, that I have a high view of the Lord's Day, that I have a high view of the gathered worship, that I have a high view of the Word and the sacraments, those kinds of things. And so it inspires them. Like, if these are things that your dad, your husband loves. So cultivating that in the home, and certainly in the church, as being a good churchman, supporting the work of the church, not always being a cynic. We have too many of those today, bitterness, and then being a good statesman, being someone that is active in society, someone who is, I frequently speak at our local county commission meetings, and so doing what it takes in society, because obviously the Freedom from Religion Foundation and all those groups, they have bought into the myth of neutrality, that if you just kind of remove religion, well, then it's all just neutral, and that's of course not the case. So being a good husband, father in the home, but also in the church and in culture and society at large.
Yeah. One of the arguments that I've made, in my book, of course, but also just in some conversations with men, is that the fact that God gives work to Adam, that you've already talked about in Genesis 1 and 2, shows us that he did not create man to just sit back and do nothing with his own creation. He was commanded and commissioned to go and develop and to build and to work,
Mm-hmm.
not only for the benefit of Eve and their future offspring, but for the benefit of creation as a whole. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have, I- in our preaching, in our ministries, in our homes, all these things, we've promoted uh, a many of biblical ideas, but we have forgotten this idea of cultivation, of development, of building, and so I think there's a lot of ways that men should consider how they are to develop their families, but also work for the betterment of their communities as well. When we begin to think about the place that God has planted us, the ministry that God has given us, we need to be that light that reflects Christ. And Christ, what did he say? I will build my church. He is building, he's developing,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to be like him in that as well. So, yeah, those are just some thoughts that I had about this idea of cultivation. It's been so ignored, especially in the civic sphere, and in our communities and in our nation, here in the last few years, because we don't want to be labeled with some crazy terms or something like that. So, or be associated with
Yeah.
some bad actors. So,
Yeah. We just had James Baird on not too long ago, his new book,
Yeah.
King of Kings. I've got my copies on my shelf for
Yeah.
me and my
I've
session.
got mine right over here.
Yeah. Look forward
as
to
do I, sitting right
I've al-
behind my laptop.
yeah, I've already read it once via PDF, but now I'm looking forward to actually put my hands on physical copy and reading it again. But I do think we have to have a fully orbed, reformed, masculine piety recovered in the PCA. And Brian, I'm just so thankful for all of your efforts. It's been a privilege to be in Presbytery with you, and really thankful for your work on the YouTube channel and your work as a pastor. I've attended the conference that you guys host every fall. Really appreciate it and enjoy it. And but when does your book come out? Or do you have any sense of that? I think you alluded to that earlier, but
Yeah,
it's kind
I
of up in
mean,
the air.
the agent is talking to a couple publishers right now, so my guess is it won't be before June or July, something like that. But yeah, we'll be sure to let you guys know once that
Yeah,
comes out.
please do. Brian and I were talking about our books, and we were talking about how we should have, packaged them as a companion set or something like that, as we put ours out. And so, yeah, mine's spring and yours is summer. So, you can pick both of them up. Maybe we can talk to some of the authors and of these books and get some giveaway copies or something like that for the
Yeah.
Reformed Men crowd. I'll see
Well,
what I can do on my end.
Well, eventually I'd love to host, I don't know when we would do it, but eventually I'd love to host a Reforming Men conference. And man, I think I would love, Brian, for you to, if it works out, for you to address the war on men. I think that would just be such an important topic for us to hear as PCA men, PCA pastors, because I do think we're either unaware of it or we don't see it. We don't see it as clearly as it is, or as clear as we should. And I think a lot of times men in our pulpits, they see it, but they wonder if we do. And I think when we as pastors are able to compassionately look at them and say, hey man, we acknowledge what's been done to you and to your sons and to your fathers, and it's a great evil in the eyes of God, and he will have his say. I think that's an incredible encouragement. So, brother, thank you so much for your time today. And I just want to again recommend your YouTube channel to all of our listeners. It's called Provide and Protect. And I don't have it with me. It's out in my car, but I got one of your Provide and Protect patches on some of my gear.
You won that, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I won the 100,000 subscribers giveaway. I'm actually wearing the belt right now that I got from that.
It's funny when we did that giveaway for the 100,000. I can't remember even when that was now, but I think it was like I can't remember when that was now, but whenever you won it, the way that I chose the winner was by everybody else. I had them like ask make a comment or question, and then the other commenters voted on those comments, and you had the highest. I was like, well, I know this guy too, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
congratulations.
I haven't had a chance to use that knife yet, but it is sweet. But I wear the belt like every other day.
Cool.
I use that Vantrue camera. By the way, men, another plug here. Go on. I'm sure you've made a video about that Vantrue vehicle camera. I highly recommend investing in one of those. I mean, it has been it's helped me capture some hilarious conversations with my kids. Because the way this camera works is there's one out your rear, there's one facing forward and there's one facing the cabin of the vehicle. And so, if you're ever in an accident, super helpful, especially if it's not your fault.
Right.
And, if you've got small kids like I do, man, you just capture some of their questions and conversations, and it's a huge blessing. So that's a good investment. Christmas is coming up, guys. Put that on your wish list. And, but anyway, so I could go on and on about that, but yeah, man, thank you so much for your time, and, really looking forward to your book coming out next year. And, I'm sure my session and I will be giving copies of both of y'all's books out to our dudes, in 2026. So thanks again for your time.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Reforming Men podcast with Teaching Elder Brian Cosby. This is Nate Zander signing off for myself and for Matt Adams, reminding you, until next time, provide and protect for the people that God has placed under your care.